everyone, it's Tara Lynn, and I am here tonight to create the Teal Dream Mandala with you. I am just going to go into the group and give everybody a second to find me. Facebook was being a little difficult today with the live, so I'm going to pin it at the top and give everybody a second. Tag a few people. Post it in the event, all that good stuff. Right, I think I am all the places. If you are with me, feel free to go ahead and say hello. Like I mentioned, Facebook did change a few things, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to see the comments, but anyway, hello, my name is Tara Lynn. I am a dot mandala artist. I live just outside Cincinnati, Ohio, and I love creating lots of beautiful dots. I've got actually quite a few at my desk here. There's rarely a day that goes by that I'm not creating something with dots. So I'm excited to share this with you. I am going to start kind of with just a few dot basics that I'm going to talk about. If you're going to participate with me today, really all you're going to need is a small surface to paint on. I've just got a small circle here. It's about 4 inches wide. Yours can be slightly larger or smaller. And I'm going to paint this black. The paint that I'm going to use, the colors that I've got today, I've got black, I've got a light teal, a dark teal, a lime, and a white. Of course, you can change those colors. You don't have to use the same colors as me. You can follow the same pattern. You can shake it up. But the idea is just to create something fun and beautiful. So you can use this as a guide, or you can follow it step by step, whatever you want to do. I'm going to paint this black, so you're also going to need a paintbrush. And then I know that dotting tools range widely. The tool that I recommend, or the set of tools I recommend most for beginners, is this Craft Smart dotting tool set. You can get this from Michael's, and what I like about it is it comes with 2 styluses. When we're talking about styluses, we're talking about the ones kind of with these pointy ends and the little ball at the tip. Those are styluses. And then it also comes with what we call rods, and rods are just these acrylic sticks. The Craft Smart brand is slightly rounded on the end. Some are just flat on the end. Either way is fine. But what you're going to need tonight as far as sizes, I tried to make it simple because I know there are lots of different types of tools. If you get some online, maybe they look like this. The sizing is always going to be different, but I am going to use one set of styluses that has a larger end and a smaller end. My end on this side is 3 millimeters, over here is 2.5 millimeters, but basically you just want 2 different sizes with the stylus. And then you're going to want 3 different sizes of your tools, a small, a medium, and a large. I've got a 6 millimeter, an 8 millimeter, and a 10 millimeter, and that's what I'm going to use. But for example, maybe your kit came with a different set of sizes, so this is, this is a 12. I could substitute that out as long as I have a small, a medium, and a large. Okay, so choose your tools kind of depending on the size of your surface. And you're going to need one stylus with 2 different ends, or 2 different styluses, a small and a large, and then a small, a medium, and a large rod. And so I'm using 6, 8, and 10 millimeters. There are other things that you can use for dotting. So for example, if you don't have a set of dotting tools, you can gather up things around the house. So for example, a pencil eraser has a nice round end on it. So that could be something that you use for dotting. A tube of lipstick or chapstick might have a nice end on it that you could use for dotting. The end of a marker. So this one, is larger than this. So this could be my small, this could be my medium, and maybe I could find a large. So don't be afraid to look around the house. So here's a dowel, or it's actually a pencil. But here could be my 3 sizes. So don't feel like you're left out if you don't have your tools. It's absolutely okay to find things around the house. Before dotting tools were common, people would just use what they could find. So please don't feel like it has to be something incredibly specific. You can dot with just about anything. All right, so what I'm going to do to get started is so I have this little tray that I like to use. You can use anything to put your paint in. This is just a silicone tray, but I'm going to get some black paint. And I'm going to paint my surface black. You're also going to need a piece of chalk or a watercolor pencil or something that you can mark with. I recommend chalk because it's inexpensive and everybody can find it at pretty much any type of store. You can get it at grocery stores, you can get it at the dollar store. But anyway, we're just going to go ahead and paint our surface black, and then I'm going to set it to the side to dry while I show you a few easy dotting tricks for those who are new to dotting. So go ahead and paint your surface black. And once you've got that painted black, we're going to go ahead and let that dry. I'm going to get my paint colors ready. So again, I'm using 4 colors. I've got white, I've got light blue, like a light teal. I've also got yellow and pink in here, just ignore that. I'm going to use light teal, dark teal, lime green, and white. So I'm using these 4 colors here, and then black for my background. Now, while we are waiting for our surface to dry, I know that there might be some new faces to dotting. Hi, Julie. Where do I get my wood rounds? I get a lot of things. Sorry, I know this is probably a few minutes later. I've got a little bit of a delay with my comments. I get my wood rounds a lot of different places. I get mine mostly from Michael's is where I get a lot of my stuff, but people can get them. I mean, Walmart has a craft aisle that's got some wood pieces. Dollar Tree is a great place to look for practice pieces. I get a lot of stuff on Amazon. So you can pretty much get them anywhere. I also have, we have a laser cutter here, so I do cut my own as well, but I will dot on just about anything. I also cast my own stones. So like here's, you can see this one's a little rough, but I will cast my own stones to dot on as well. But these actually, what I'm creating on today are little disposable coasters, and I use these for practice. So they are great for trying out a design. They're thin, they're cheap. You can get a pack of 100 for like 10 bucks. In that way, like I'll use them for practice. So got these on Amazon. That's what I'm using tonight. So great question, Julie. I'm sure a lot of people have that question. So I do, for those of you who are new to dotting, I just want to show you kind of a few things. I'm just going to get, here's my little to-do list notebook here. I'm just going to get a piece of paper and talk about a few things with you. The first is paint consistency. Paint consistency is really important with dotting. And I typically will use Decoart Americana brand, and I like it right from the bottle. I don't add water to it. I don't worry about the thickness because this works really well. Decoart also has a craft brand. I think it's called Decoart. I think it's Crafter's Choice. That works pretty well too. It's a little bit thinner, but I do like it, and it comes in a million different colors, and so I love the Decoart. Your paint consistency, I mean, it's hard to talk about consistency when you're not here with me and I can't show you the thinness or thickness of the paint, but what I want you to think of is melted ice cream. You want it to be kind of the consistency of a milkshake or melted ice cream, and I'm going to show you a few things. So when I dip my tool into the paint, I want to dip it up with the rods up over the edge, and it should be a little fluid so that I can see the paint, you know, as I tilt this, it will move around the edge a little bit, but it doesn't drip off. I don't want it to be so thin that it's drippy, and I don't want it to be so thick that it kind of makes a peak. Okay, so the consistency is important, and you can thin it. If your paint is too thick, you can thin it with a pinch of water, or you can thin it with fluid medium. If it is too thin, you can thicken it with gel medium. And so here's kind of what I look for. Now when you make a dot, what you want to do is hold your tool, hold your rod at 90 degrees to your surface, and you want to gently kiss the paper. Now I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but what I want to do is smush the paint so that I can see it smush. I call it kissing. It's going to come out of the end just a little bit, and then I'm going to pull it up. It's going to make a little peak, and then that peak is going to eventually fall back and become even with my surface. And so what you don't want to see is if you push down too hard, you'll see the difference between this and this. This is too hard. It doesn't have a little bubble. It's kind of got that little smush mark like you stamped it. You don't want to stamp it. The edge of your tool barely touches your surface. You just want to give it a kiss so that the paint kind of blobs out underneath it, and the paint is what's touching the surface, not the tool. So it's a subtle difference, but it makes a big difference in the way that they look. So I will do another one. If you don't have enough paint, so for example, like here, I don't have enough paint. I didn't come up over the edge of my tool. There's not a whole lot on there. So when I go to make my kiss, I'm going to have to push down too hard. And again, it's going to make that weird little smush. What I want it to do is when I have plenty of paint on there, I can see the paint moving around on the end. And when I smush down, it's going to blob out just a little bit and then go back in and make a nice little dot. So that can take a little practice, but the best way to get perfect dots is just to keep dotting more and more. And the more that you practice, the better they get. Another thing that might happen, let me see if I've got some thick paint around here. All right, if your paint is too thick, I'm gonna make a mess here. Get some thick paint out. How to know if your paint is too thick. All right, so here's some thick paint here. I'm going to blob it up and get it on my tool. You can see it doesn't move when I put it on the end. And when I make my dot, it will squish and blob out. But when I pull up, it kind of makes that weird mountain. It makes like a Hershey kiss, a peak. We don't want that. We want the, as you can see on these, they've flattened a little bit. That's what we want. We want the paint to kind of settle down and even out. And it won't do that if it's too thick. So if the paint is too thick, you'll get kind of that kiss, and you don't want that. So those are just a few pointers. I'm sorry if, you know, this is all common knowledge, if everybody watching has done this before, but I thought maybe there would be some people new to dotting. So I just wanted to talk about some of those paint issues that might arise. So I'm going to set this over to the side, hopefully not make a mess with it. The other thing I want to talk about, we're not going to focus too much on this because I don't have any of these in this design. But while you're creating, if you get interested in dotting, there are some different types of things you can do with dots. The first one is called a swipe. And a swipe is when you take some paint, and I'm going to use my stylus. You hold it like a pencil, you use pressure like a pencil, and you pull down on where you put the dot, and it'll make a swipe. Okay. Typically swipes are just straight. A stripe that has a curve to it is called a swoosh, and it's the same process. You just hold it like a pencil, put it down, you don't vary the pressure, and then you pull the paint in the shape or the curve that you want it. Those are called swooshes. Another thing that you can do is called a pin, and that is where you make a dot and then you pull a little bit out of that dot. And so I'll show you one of those really quick. So you make your dot with your rod, and then you can use your stylus or another small tipped tool like a pin or a pencil lead, and you can pull that pin out. So that is an option while you're dotting. And you can combine a lot of these different things to make some cool effects. The next is called a teardrop. It's the same method as the pin, where you would use the rod to make the dot, and then you would use the stylus to pull that into a teardrop shape. So same process, but a teardrop instead of a pin. And then the same thing with what I call tadpoles. It's a dot, and then instead of pulling it straight, you would pull it into a swoosh with a curve. So those are just some design elements that you could potentially do. By combining these, you can come up with a whole bunch of different ways to make designs. All right, so that's my little dotting 101. My surface here is dry, and so I'm gonna get my chalk out. And when I say chalk, I'm using just everyday chalk. It's probably Crayola brand. And the reason why I like chalk is because it'll wipe away really easily when you're done. But what I'm gonna do here is we wanna find our center. So I am gonna find kind of the middle of my piece, and I'm gonna draw an X right through my design here to help me find the center. A lot of times when I'm making my dot art, I use the terms north, south, east, and west, and this is what I'm referring to. I'm referring to these cardinal points, the main cardinal points that we create with. You can also get stencils. You know, if you're into dotting, they make stencils. Happy Dotting Company has silicone stencils. There are some you can get on the internet. They make this really easy by putting these points on there, but you can also create without a stencil as well. So I've got my middle here, and I'm gonna dissect my middle into 2 more sections so that we have 8 total. So I've got my north, south, east, and west, and then I've got these in-betweeny sections. And that's really all I'm gonna need to make the design that we're gonna do today. So don't feel like you have to have everything. Dot art can be really basic if you let it. All right. So that is how we divide our sections. I hope I'm not moving too fast. I have a tendency to zip through things. You can, as we're creating, you should be able to pause and rewind this as well. So don't feel like you have to zip along with me. All right, so you are gonna need your small, medium, and large tools. And I've got small, medium, and large rods, and then 2 sizes for my stylus. And I'm gonna start with my first dot. I'm going to use my dark teal for my center dot. So I'm going to use my largest tool, my largest rod. I'm going to dip it into the paint, make sure it goes up over the edge. I'm going to hold it at 90 degrees to my surface, and I am going to gently kiss the dot right in the center. And that is our first dot. And you'll see me wipe my tools off in between. I like to use a wet paper towel or a baby wipe. It's a really easy way to get the paint off and move on to the next color. So go ahead and get that middle dot on there with your largest round tool. I used a 10mm. Some tools are marked. That's really handy. Sometimes, like you can see on mine, I've kind of cheated. I've added the millimeters on there, but those wipe off really easily. All right, and then I am going to switch to my stylus. I've got a large end and a small end. I'm going to work with the small end in my light blue paint, and I'm going to create 4 dots in my cardinal points. So right adjacent to my middle circle, I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm using the light blue. And then once I have these 4 points, I'm going to put 4 more dots in between here. So we're going to end up with 8 total. So in between here, I've got this cross mark. So basically we're putting 1 dot on every line, but you really want these to be centered. So ideally when we're finished, we're going to have 8 dots that are equidistant from each other, 1 on each line. And my lines aren't perfect, so I'm kind of using my eyes to adjust a little bit. But once we have these 8 dots down, it's going to set the rest of the design. So I want to make sure I get those down good. So I have 8 light blue dots, 1 on each line all the way around. All right, so 8 light blue dots. Then I'm going to switch to the large end of my stylus, and I'm going to use my lime green paint. And in between each one of these dots, I'm going to add a larger dot. So this is going to be on the space in between the lines. So it's going to go light blue dot, larger lime green dot, light blue dot, larger lime green dot. And that's going to be the pattern. So it's going to be blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, all the way around. So we're going to add 8 of the green dots for a total of 16 all the way around the circle of light blue and green. So they will alternate. All right, I'm going to continue with the large end of my stylus. I'm going to go back to the light blue paint. So we're going to focus on these light blue dots for a minute. So I've got a small light blue dot. Wherever I have a light blue dot next to it, I'm going to put a larger dot. So this is a small dot that we created. I'm going to use the large end. And so it's going to be light blue small, light blue large. And so kind of put it out just a little bit like it's in the next row. And I'll show you what I mean by that when I get all of these on here. I'm going to add 1 on each line next to my light blue dots. There will be 8 total, so it's going to go small dot, big dot, using the ends of the stylus. We've already got the small dot there. We're adding the large dot next to it. And then I'm going to go back to the small side and I'm going to add 1 more dot. So we're going to have a row of light blue that goes small, big, small. And so for every row of light blue, small, big, small, small, big, small. And I'm going to go all the way around on all of these so that all of my light blue dots have the same pattern. A trick with dot painting is if you change the design, so let's say you change your spacing from mine, you do something on accident, you mess something up, as long as you do it all the way around, you want to repeat that pattern and it'll work for you. So think of it like a sun ray. In these light blue sun rays, it's going to go small, small dot, larger dot, smaller dot. All right, next I am going to go to my rods. So we have a small, medium, and a large. I'm going to grab my small rod. For me, that's a purple 6mm rod. and I'm going to grab, or I'm going to dip it into my green paint. Now, as we start using these larger tools instead of the styluses, when we make a dot, we need to leave enough room for it to swish out a little bit. But what I'm going to do is wherever we've got our little tiny green dot, just out kind of in between the ends of these two little dots, in the black space, I'm going to add another dot. So we made rays with the blue, small, large, small. We're going to do the same thing with the green. It's going to go green, small, and then we're going to add this one with the small rod. I get kind of wordy, but it's easier just to look and see what I'm doing. So it's going to go in between those rays that we created with the blue. And I'm going to go all the way around with those, one in each space, so that we get 8 of those. And then I'm going to use the same tool, the 6mm small rod. I'm going to continue with the green. And this time I'm going to add a dot in between each of these green dots that we just made. It'll be on the line next to the blue rays. So let me show you what I mean. So we're going to work out the next row by placing the same size dot next to the blue ray. We're going to go all the way around with those, one on each line, so there'll be 8 total. All right, I'm going to go back to my stylus and the white paint. So with every dot that we make, we re-dip into the paint. And I am going to add, using the small side of the stylus, I'm going to add 2 white dots in between these lines. So I've got my green dot here, and I've got this black space. And I want to create 2 dots with white. So I'm going to visualize them equally distant apart. So I'm going to make a dot, re-dip, make another dot. So however it's easier for you to visualize, if you're looking at this like a pizza or a piece of pie, 2 even dots in between the edges of the pie. And then I'm going to repeat that pattern all the way around. So it goes in between these large green dots. And make sure you dot and dip between each dot. And what you do in one section of the pie, you do all the way around. So when we are done, we end up with 8 sections of 2 dots. Next, I'm going to switch to my medium tool, which is 8mm. For me, it's a blue tool. And I'm going to go back to my light blue, or light teal. And we're going to add 1 medium-sized dot right next to those 2 dots that we made. So inside each slice of pizza, centered, we're going to add 1 medium-size light blue or light teal dot. And we're going to do that all the way around. So 1 in each pie piece. So we end up with 8 of those. Next, I'm going to switch to my stylus. I'm going to use the large end and some white paint. And on each line, in between the blues, so the same circle row as the light blue, I'm going to add a dot of white. And so that'll fall on the line. I'm going to go around on every line and add 8 of those in between my light teal circles or my light blue circles. All right, next step, we're going to add some of the darker teal or darker blue, and I'm going to use my large tool. Now what I want you to do is, we're all creating on different surfaces. Yours might be smaller or bigger than mine. Look at the space that you have available. I have a lot of space, so I'm going to use my large tool. If you have a much smaller space, you might want to use your medium or your small tool. Okay, so use your best judgment according to how much space you have left. But we're going to need a pretty good size amount of space for the next step, because what we're going to do is, next to where we have these dots, we're going to create another dot, and then we're going to circle it with tiny dots. Okay, so you need a little bit of room. So if you only have enough room maybe for a little dot and then a circle around it, go ahead and do that. But right now, choose the size dot that you want to do. I'm going to use my large tool and my dark teal or dark blue paint, and then I've got my white circle. So I've got a green dot, a white dot, and then I'm going to do my dark teal dot, but I'm going to leave some space because I want to be able to encircle that with another set of dots. But right now I'm just worried about putting these dots on. So I'm going to add 1 dot on the line, making sure I've got space all the way around it for more dots. So I'm going to end up with 8 of those all the way around. All right, the last step of this design is we are going to encircle each of these with a set of dots. And this takes a little time. This is a little tedious. I'm going to switch to my white paint. I'm going to use my stylus on, let's see, I use the large dot, so I think I'm going to use my large end. And I am going to, around each one of these, dot and dip my cardinal points. So I've got my north, my south, and you'll see I'm dipping each time, dot and dip. East, west, and then I'm going to do in between. So I end up with 8 around that circle. Now if you're feeling brave, Maybe you can add another set of dots in between each of these. I don't know that I've got enough space to do that, so I'm going to move on. Sometimes you just have to make these judgment calls kind of based on the amount of space that you have and the design that you were thinking. So I add my 4 points, and then I go back and add 4 more so that each circle is surrounded by dots. Now, as I finish this up, I think I might want these white dots to be a little tighter, so I am going to switch to the smaller end of my stylus and maybe add some small dots in there. And this is what I mean by you have to kind of look at your own design and your own spacing and make it work for you. Every time I sit to create something, I'm in a different headspace, I'm feeling a different vibe, and so I'm changing it up a little bit. I like that much better. I like it more full, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I've got a pattern of large dot, small dot. And I'm going to do that for all of these. I think it just looks a little better based on the sizes that I chose and the spacing that I have. But again, you don't have to do that. And we've got one more part of this workshop, and that is something called top dots. And when we do top dots, we want our first layer to be dry before we add top dots because we don't want to mess up what we just worked so hard on. But I will use a hairdryer and kind of dry my design before I do that. You can do the same thing if you've got a dryer available, or you can always walk away and come back to your project a little bit later. But I will show you what I do for top dots, and I like to encourage my followers to do their own top dot design. So you can't go wrong if you're working within the color palette that you did your first layer with. You can choose your own design for your top dots. Some people really go crazy with top dots and do them everywhere. Some people are more sparing. It is a personal choice, and there is no right or wrong. And while I'm working on this, I would be a bad business owner if I did not mention that I do have a dot mandala club. It is called the Kaleidoscope Mandala Club, and we do dot mandala designs 3 times a month, and it includes a subscription box, and I do always post information about that in the group. I also have a YouTube channel where I do some free designs, and I like to post color palettes and some fun things in the group. So if you'd enjoy this, if you have enjoyed this with me tonight, you can look around in the group and find a lot of resources and fun stuff here. And if I am new to you, I would love a follow on my business page, Tara Lynn Pugh Artist. All right, so I have finished those large circles all the way around. I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic for just a moment, and I'm going to dry this, and then we'll talk about top dots. right, so you can see on my design here, first of all, this chalk that's on here will easily wipe away when everything is completely dry. So don't feel like your outlines that you made have to stay there forever. Okay, let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow just gently wipe it with a wet paper towel, and those chalk lines will come right off. That's why I love working with chalk. So the next step, again, is top dots. And so when I do top dots, what I like to do is just look at the color palette that I've been working with and add dots right on top. And I just want them to be slightly smaller than the dots that are underneath. So for my center dot, you can just vary up your colors. There's no right or wrong. You can absolutely look at the picture, for the event sample. But here in the center, I'm going to add a light blue dot. Here on the ends where I've got these great big circles surrounded by white, maybe I will add a green dot in there. So this is where you can use some of your own creativity with the top dots and just go around and see what feels right. Vary up the colors and have a good time adding some top dots on there. And you'll see, if this is something that interests you and you kind of look around the internet, you'll see so many different options. Some people don't top dot at all. Some people will add one layer of top dots, and there are other people that will layer up and up and up, 3 or 4 layers of top dots. You don't have to put top dots on everything. You don't have to put top dots on really anything. It's totally up to you. And don't forget that you can also use your background color for top dots as well. So we've got black in the background. That is the color you can reincorporate into some top dots if you feel like it. Alright, so here is an example of top dots. And of course, yours can look totally different from mine. You do not have to follow my top dot pattern at all. Have fun with it, make it your own, and that is the Teal Dreams design that I have come up with. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a really simple, basic design, but just by changing up the colors, changing up the spacing, you can make this look very different in a lot of different ways. So please experiment, have a good time. Remember when it's completely dry, and I would give it a couple hours before you do anything to it, just because when you do top dots, that paint can create thickness and it takes a while for it to dry completely. But remember, you can wipe off those chalk lines, and then a lot of people will choose to varnish their pieces. You can use any varnish that you want. I tend to use Decoart Triple Thick. It's one of my favorites to use. Let me see if I have some to show you. This is what that looks like, Decoart Americana Triple Thick. Most craft stores sell it. You can get it online. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. Please give me a follow and a like if you don't mind, and then check out all the different resources in the group, and happy dotting, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'll see you next time.